Welcome to the New World Order Showcase Podcast. Your host, Jill Hart, the coach's Alchemist. Couldn't be more excited to have you join us today. On this podcast, we celebrate the champions of change, the up-and-coming life, health and transformational coaches who are fearlessly stepping forward to make a difference in the world. Get ready for inspiring stories, practical tips, and powerful moments that will motivate you to make a positive change in your life and those around you. We're happy to have you join us on this incredible journey as we dive into the world of life, health, and transformational coaches who are lighting up the path towards a better tomorrow.
Hi, and welcome to the New World Order Showcase Podcast. Today we are blessed to have Dave and Wendy O'Neil joining us. They are authors and they are the founders of Pearls with Purpose, which we're going to talk about. This is a fascinating thing that they're doing there. And they are the founders of Unstick the Stuck, which is a program that's strengthening and growing from the inside out, strengthening all the relationships, starting with your own relationship with yourself. Hope I got that right.
We said that better ourselves.
Okay, good. Welcome to the show, Dave and Wendy.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we're so glad to be here. Thanks for your time today. We deeply appreciate it, Jill.
Well, I am really excited to dive into all the pieces of what you're doing out there. I know that we really want to focus on the Unstick the Stuck part, but can you just give us a quick rundown on the Pearls with Purpose? I think that's so fascinating what you guys have done over the years, and it's helped so many people, undoubtedly.
It has, and I think honestly, looking at that and our past is what really explains, some of the reason why we are doing so well with the relationship coaching and helping people there. So I'll let Wendy tell you a little bit about it because that's her story.
So I started Pearls with Purpose in 2001, and I was a stay-at-home mom of 5 kids, had been pregnant or nursing for a decade straight, and toilet training, as you know, being a mom of 5 kids yourself, and had lost my identity. My husband at the time said, you're a certified gemologist. Why don't you make some jewelry, go sell it at Saturday's market? I was like, that's a great idea. And I'm sure you're familiar with AOL dial-up internet days. I sent out a bunch of random emails to those addresses, some addresses that I'd made up, pearls for sale at Edzamel, pearl jewelry at Hotmail, things like that. Got some factory responses, but I did get one response from a live human being, and she, in the body of her email, stated, if you imported finished pieces of jewelry from me rather than loose pearls, you would change women's lives in my country. And it floored me. I didn't know, what to think. I was like, well, I'm looking to change my life. I have no idea where the Philippines is. I don't have a passport. And so I emailed her back and said, well, how would that work? And she said, I will find the women, you just teach me what to do. And so we did, over the course of a couple of years, sent several tutorials, trainings, and different things all through AOL, and went with 4 women, then 23 women, then 64 women, all women from squatters' villages. And then people heard what I was doing. So we were able to strategically align with a lot of really incredible organizations. And things evolved into the tsunami devastation, survivors of the tsunami, and then an orphanage in Cambodia, then leprosy-afflicted women in India, then women who had been human trafficked and rescued in Peru and Dominican Republic and Kenya. So we kind of just ebbed and flowed where we were invited to go to help, other individuals. But here's where the Unstick the Stuck comes in. In 2017, on a trip to the Philippines, I was approached by several women that I didn't remember their names. I didn't recognize them. And so I was, hey, remind me what your name was. Like, when were you trained? Oh, you didn't train me. You trained my mom. Nanette. I am her daughter. And because of the training, I graduated college, I'm married, I have a baby, I built a house, I did this, I did that. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this generational cycle of poverty is now completely broken. And when I was going out to interact and meet with the women, it was not, I need food, I need a house, I need a job. It was, what's next, Wendy? How do I contribute? How do I do what you're doing? How can I help other people? How can I make my marriage better? And I was just like, I don't know. Like I had built everything around, let's just get you off the ground and going. And so I had to, come back to America and be like, how can I grow? How can I improve? And so I became a CHPC. It's a certified high performance coach. And that's a whole story. And in doing that, I realized, Maslow's hierarchy of needs and human development. And once we have clothing, food, shelter, and that base foundational level of his hierarchy established, we can then ascend into educating for ourselves, educating others. We can then ascend into contribution to society, to community, to family, to friends. And then we can ascend even further into self-actualization. And so I pursued that with like a fervor that is still going today, and was able to get myself out of a 3-decade highly toxic relationship, and didn't even know, right? You don't know what you don't know until you start to identify it. And then you're like, what have I allowed to transpire? And David was in a similar situation.
Yeah.
And we both were attending Tony Robbins. He's a high performance developer, a personal developer, his World Summit during October of 2020.
Yep.
Everything went virtual. 30,000 other people were attending. We happened to be in the same Zoom room. He's on the East Coast. I'm on the West Coast. And we got put in the same Zoom room 29. And we chatted and developed a relationship. And it was like, wow, you're healthy, I'm healthy. Because of Unstick the Stuck, we knew what we had to do, to not fall into those traps of what we both had experienced in our prior marriages. And so we started creating this curriculum. We started teaching it, because just the concept that in your 50s, there's hope to have a healthy, functioning, dynamic relationship, like that alone is mind-blowing.
Yeah, between the two of us, we've over 50 years of dysfunction.
Mm-hmm.
And, when you say that there isn't a higher purpose, there's no way we would have found each other, me from New Hampshire and her in Utah. And yet it happened. And what we realized very quickly was, had we not done the work on ourselves, we never would have, even if we had talked to each other, it just wouldn't have clicked the same way, because we
would have been stuck in our own loop.
Yep, exactly. And it just never would have been an option. And so because we decided that, there may not be somebody else, we may be by ourselves for the rest of our lives.
Neither of us was looking.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
But we wanted to become the best version of ourselves for us. And simply by doing that, I think it just opened up the doors to an amazing relationship. And we really have come to determine that we think everybody should have this type of relationship. It's possible. It's just a matter of, you got to do the work. But once you put in that time, everybody can just be this happy and feel this great. And that's really what we're all about.
Yeah.
That
was a very long answer.
I know, sorry.
No, it's great. I was just thinking, Tony Robbins, I have a long history with Tony Robbins. I lived in San Diego when he was first getting started. And I went to one of his first seminars when there was maybe, 40 or 50 people in the room. And he got up to talk, and he started talking about Mother Teresa and Captain Steve Coffey. Well, Captain Steve Coffey was my neighbor. I used to run around with his sons.
What a small world.
It is really a small world. So when you're talking about the synchronicity of you guys meeting in that room, it's just like, things don't happen by accident. And
no, I don't.
Definitely believe in the power of figuring out who you are, and then coming together as two whole people instead of two broken people, trying to like patch it together to make one whole one, which was the paradigm for so many years. So I'm really excited to see that you guys are living your what you teach in terms of healing yourself to get unstuck. So you told me before we started recording that you've been actually teaching this for like a year now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we go around into conferences and there's a 1 hour breakout, and this course, Unstick the Stuck, has really resonated. We thought in the beginning, because of our age bracket, it would kind of be something where there would be like, 45 plus, my marriage, I've been in it for 20 years, 30 years, help me revive it, whatever.
Let's bring it back.
But the reality is we've had so many single people, we've had millennials, we've had people living together that are just going, do I want to keep living with this person? Like, what are our things that we're grinding on all the time? And as we continue to teach it and interact with people, whether it's in a coaching setting or in this curriculum course environment, it's resonated with all ages, because people are saying, yeah, I actually communicate that way, and I didn't realize that wasn't the best way. Or I actually respond to my kids this way, or actually I'm super critical. I didn't understand I could just offer a complaint instead of a criticism, and then they wouldn't hit their shame cycle. And so there's just these epiphanies occurring, because it isn't like here's how you're going to meet the person you're going to fall in love with and be happily forever after. Like that's not what we're about. It's about, here's who you're going to meet, and here's how you're going to create your happily ever after, so you don't have to constantly be seeking somebody else to fill the void of intimacy, or the void of I'm not enough, or the void of I eat through my emotions. That's all the work you get to do. And when you're doing that work, if you have somebody by your side who's enrolled in the idea of, oh, I don't have to save you, but I can be your friend, and I can support you, and I can be by your side, and I cannot criticize you and shame you either. It's amazing what happens when you get those two healthy dynamics together. And it's all learning, right?
It kind of reminds me of, I was a lifeguard for many years in Hawaii, and one of the things that you don't want to do is jump in to try to save someone who's drowning if you're not trained to do it, because you will both drown. And a lot of times relationships are like that. They both are victims, and they're just drowning because they don't know how to empower themselves to be the hero of their own stories. And it sounds like that's what you do. You empower people to, pick up the sword and fight their battle and triumph and tell the story on the other side.
It really comes down to, and in my opinion, it is, you can't possibly love someone else, and I don't care if it's a partner or a family member or just a neighbor, if you haven't figured out how to love yourself first. Because whatever story you're telling yourself, those words are going to come out when you're talking to other people. And so it really has to start with that, loving yourself. And we both, Wendy obviously has had the chance over the last 20 years to travel to so many different places and help so many people. And for me, my story is when I was 15, I got to see the poorest part of Mexico. And I got to see what it was like to not have things, but to have joy and happiness. And that is really what's more important. And then the other thing that we talk about all the time, and it's sad, but it's true, is we're told, you go to school and you find a spouse and the right person, and you get married and you live happily ever after. But nobody ever tells you how to do it. And so you don't know how to have the hard conversations. And if you don't know how to do it, and you try a couple of times and it turns into a big argument, well, then your next step is going to be, I'll just stop having those conversations. And that's, the death knell for a relationship. And so people are just looking for, just like Wendy said, just those ideas, and they're simple ideas of, oh, I can do this and this will work. So, and that's what we just want to do, is share that with as many people as possible.
part of the reason why we got to that point where we didn't really know how to have relationships is because it's really our parents, and I'm thinking you guys are not far behind the age that I am, are they were, I know my mom was a young woman when the Civil Rights Act was passed. Most people are not aware that the Civil Rights Act was really the catalyst that allowed women to be independent human beings rather than being chattel to their husbands. Women used to go to college not to get an education because all they could be were teachers or nurses, but to find a husband to support them. And if you couldn't find a husband, you were pretty much going to be out of luck. You weren't going to own a home. You weren't going to have a lot of the things that independent single women these days, you can have anything you want. But that wasn't always the case. And so we learned these relationship paradigms from our parents, our moms and dads, who had a different dynamic going on. They weren't, they got married and there was no divorce even before that. And then during the 70s and 80s, there was just like this explosion of people separating and divorcing. And a lot of times there were like older women who didn't have careers. They didn't know how to get started. And it really kind of messed up a couple decades worth of kids out there who didn't A, know how to have a relationship, B, didn't really understand that as women, we could be anything we wanted to be. We didn't have to fall into these boxes that had been set up by our parents to fit their narrative. And it's refreshing to me to see it coming a full circle, and women are really starting to understand that they're responsible for themselves. They don't have to have a husband. They don't have to have a family if they don't want to. They can, but they don't have to. It's not a requirement. And it was for a long time. The standard from happiness was X, Y, and Z. Now it's just like we're rewriting all of it. And it's so refreshing to see, what you're doing out there, just kind of giving people a roadmap to say, here, let's look at it from this perspective and see how this feels for you. And maybe if this isn't working, maybe we could try it this way. Because there's not any, you don't have to follow any certain path to get to this point that I think you're trying to help people get to becoming unstuck.
Well, alluding to that, what your parents did, right? No parent is given a handbook. And so my hat is off to anyone who takes on the hat of parenting, because it's tough. And it's different for every individual experiences the throes of motherhood, fatherhood, parenthood in general. And but it reminds me of that story of, the daughter who cuts off the ends of the meat to put it in the pan and cook it. And the husband's like, why do you do that? That's like such a waste of meat. Well, that's how you do it. That's what my mom taught me. And so he calls the mother, and the mother's like, well, that's what my mom taught me. And then they call the great grandma, grandma, why did we always cut off the ends? Oh, because my pan was so small, that's the only way the meat would fit in it. And so here they were practicing the same ritual with cooking this roast and losing a lot of value, a lot of protein, a lot of expensive cuts of meat, simply because of the size of a pan and a faulty belief system from a predecessor, generationally down. And when you look at the plethora of, therapy, EMDR, like any rewiring abilities that are out there today, we really don't have an excuse to stay stuck unless we are choosing victimization, rationalization, causation. Like it's a choice, to simply say, like Carol Dweck in her open mindset book, I'm going to be closed off. I'm going to continue with my life like this. And that's on you at that point. You've got to be willing to open up those blinders and say, maybe there is a different way. And maybe that different way will actually kind of cut some bonds that have been chaining me down to the wrong thing for a while.
Yeah. And those paradigms that we take with us that aren't serving us, you just have to keep looking at your life and saying, hey, was this decision good? Or could I maybe make a different decision to get a different result?
Mm-hmm.
But when you do that and you have become a whole and happy person,
Mm-hmm.
now imagine what you can give to your partner or to your
Mm-hmm.
children or to, and so because you're no longer seeking that happiness, that validation, that strength from anybody else. You've created it within yourself, and now you get to share that. And so when you get two people who join together and they've already gone through that journey, that's where you're going to find that real happiness, because neither one of them is looking to get it from the other one. They've already found their happiness, but then they find that then when they do things together, they're even more happy. They get even more joy out of sharing those experiences. And so that's what we're really all about. And it's just been so much fun.
Like
And it spills out to the community.
Yeah, it does. We were interacting with a couple just recently, and he said, and they were on second marriage, and he said that his divorce happened because when they got married, about 5 years in, his ex-wife had said, I never want kids, never want a family.
Did not say it before
and didn't
they
say
got
it before they got married. And he was just kind of like, oh my gosh. Well, then the next 5 years, it was, okay, we will never be having kids. So I'm going to basically be an adult / boy / playboy. Like, I'm just going to have fun because I don't have to, I can be a little reckless. I can get my little boy toys and I can go do my little ski weekends and I can have a good time over here. And I'm never going to have this responsibility of parenthood. So it's okay.
And
well,
he
then
literally got a job in the sporting goods industry.
Yeah, so
he could travel
do
the
all
world, get
his
sales
fun.
events and do all the fun things.
And then fast forward 5 more years,
Guess
and
what?
she flipped the script. And
Yeah.
she said, I'm ready to have kids. And he's like, I was 44.
Yeah.
He said, I was never in my mind going to have kids. And so they did. They had a couple kids, but it just was like, so he said, I couldn't ever like reconcile. And his ex-wife is a therapist. And so it's like, we were just constantly at these odds and these battles, and he's remarried now, super happy. And they have this blended family of his 2 kids from his first marriage and hers. But think of that, you're going one way with a person who you didn't even have the conversation at the get-go of, do you want to have a family? Right. And how critical is that? And I mean, I know when I first got married, those weren't the questions we were asking,
Like you said, there was almost an assumption, right?
Yeah.
That's what you do.
Yeah. And nowadays it's, no, let's ask some of these hard questions. These are pivotal for whether or not we can have something sustainable.
Yeah. It's if you want it to go the distance, you need to think about what it's going to look like when you get to that point, even early on. And and there's so many different ways you can have relationships today. It's not, getting married is just one option. You can live with people, you can have long distance relationships where you only see each other, once a month or twice a year. That works for some people. And the millennials are doing crazy things. I mean, it's just like, and it's working for them.
Is it though?
Yeah, I mean,
there's a lot that's not working for that age bracket. That I mean, they may have a different way of approaching relationships that they're telling themselves is working, but then they have that spike in mental illness, depression, suicide ideation, social anxieties, like all of that is spiking. And a lot of that is completely correlated to the decline of defining your moral values and living out of congruency with what your core belief is. So you have to
think part of that has to do with, we don't really teach people how to define their core values, or that specific group of people. Also, they're trying to come of age and figure out relationships in an age where so much is done online and so much is done in an artificial reality. A lot of these people are gamers, and a lot of them have drug habits that is becoming more mainstream even than when we were young. And
Yeah,
it was
there's
kind
stuff
of like,
to keep them from having to address what they're feeling. They're
right.
not, whether it's through a game, through a substance,
Yeah.
it's numbing.
And it's not, just drugs or alcohol. It could be, hitting those Monster energy drinks, and nothing against Monster, but when you're constantly feeding yourself chemicals to alter your state. But you're right. I think you're either, buried in a game or buried in a cell phone, or,
A movie,
it's
a
hard.
binge
Yeah.
on Netflix, like
And
there's
it's hard
so many ways.
to see people face to face and talk to people face to face. And again, it is difficult to have those conversations. One of my favorite quotes of Wendy's is that, if you, and I'll probably say it all wrong, but you can make the choice to avoid, that
I'll
conversation.
say it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Avoiding difficult conversations trades short-term discomfort for long-term dysfunction.
The thing is,
that's the crux.
The problem is a lot of people, young people especially, but a lot of people don't know that. So their assumption is, if I just avoid that short-term discomfort, it will go away. Guess what?
It just creates these dysfunctional responses, dysfunctional habits and behaviors that cement in a less than feeling for their relationship partner. Or we had one who said, I just felt invisible. Like we were together all the time, but we were always on our phones. And it's like, okay, you may be together physically, but are you together energetically, emotionally, spiritually? Like all of those components need to be addressed in the dynamic of a relationship. Because I can stand by Dave all day long, and if we're not conversing or engaged or looking eye to eye, those neurons aren't firing between us. I could come out of it saying, I haven't spent any time with you. Right?
Yeah. And I think that's a problem that is really, it's evolving more rapidly now with the way society is going with all of the electronics.
Yeah.
Technology has rewired the brain neurons, and the earlier a individual has access to that technology, whether it's just sitting in front of a screen or on the phone or an iPad, the earlier age that hits, the greater rewiring is occurring on those brain neurons. And there's actually studies on the spike in autism and autistic behaviors because of that rewiring. There's studies on mental illness incline and suicide ideation incline because of technology rewiring. Adam Alter wrote a book called Irresistible. And in this book, he tracks clear back to the Vietnam War on what has been done for brain wiring processes. And then he pulls in, and here's how technology impacts those neurons, and taking it even to the fact that the Apple guy, I forgot his name, Steve Jobs.
Yeah,
Steve Jobs.
He wouldn't even give his kids the iPhone and the iPad until after the age of 18. He said, your brains aren't fully formed, and I don't want to create addiction for you. And it's like, okay, if the creator of these tools is actually holding back on giving them to his own kids, what does that say to us as parents? We have to be pretty diligent.
School systems are going to everything being online. It's just like, that's crazy to me. I homeschooled my last 3, and we had real tight rules about the internet. They didn't even have computers until they were access to computers other than in my room until they were in their teens. And TV just isn't on very often in our house. We don't even have a TV in our living room. And yeah, I didn't have TV at all when I was growing up. I was a teenager before we even had a television in the house.
Wow. That's fortunate. I grew up watching, when as soon as we could get cable with all the channels, we did. And then I see my parents now in their 80s, and the TV turns on at about noon and it stays on until 10 p.m. And that's what they do. And so, and yet, again, you go back to the younger age. We've got a friend, or a couple friend out east, and I never forgot when they were moving in, they had one L-shaped desk, and they got another L-shaped desk so they can put them across from each other. And I thought that's cute, that because they can work together. No, they set up banks of screens between them so that they can game together. They can't see each other, but they're gaming in the same room, looking at screens, not even looking at each other. And so that's what they're doing together. Whereas, us old folks, we're out going for hikes and holding hands and walking through nature. And like Wendy said, we're talking, we're looking at each other. And I you can have a relationship that way. I'm not saying there's only one way to do it. It's just like you said, there's many ways to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, if you want to be happy, there are certain things that you do kind of have to do. And that's the thing, let's just, if we can help you be happy, that's what we're looking for.
And it's not just relationships, with somebody that you want to be married to or be intimate with. We're talking about relationships with everybody.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. We've had mother-daughters, we've had all sorts of people that we've been able to work with, but the core communication skills and the core ideas, they're starting with your relationship with yourself. So they're going to work with everyone. And that's the whole goal, because ultimately everybody's in a different place in life. But yeah, they may have a wonderful relationship with their spouse, but there's that one child they just cannot get through to. And so if we can help with that, then yeah, we just are happy to do it.
Yeah, a thing that meant a lot to me, one of a biggest breakthrough for a woman who was in her 60s, school teacher, getting ready to retire, had kids of her own, had grandkids even. And during the course last year on complaint versus criticism, she came up afterwards just crying and said, I wish I would have understood that difference when I was raising my kids. And now with the school kids, she said, I think I have shamed every child in my life. And I didn't know I was shaming them, because it was, why don't you do this? And this is such a mess, and da 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 da, and just, belaboring it, versus the complaint, the observation of, hey, these are on the floor. You want to help me pick them up? Or, your dad works really hard to earn the money for the clothes. And what if we hang them on the hanger? That's observation versus you did this. You made this mess. You need to clean it up. You don't take care of things. You're worthless is all the child hears at that point. Mm-hmm. And she just talked about how during the day at school, she was loving and kind to the kids, but it was, you didn't do the homework right. And you need help. You need to change your penmanship. You need whatever it was. And she said, I look back and just wish I would have had that distinction between complaint and criticism for my kids. And I was like, wow. So just, one thing
can make a big difference.
Yeah.
And you spread that out over, all the teachers out there. You tell one teacher and she tells somebody else, and then they tell two people. The whole MLM of changing the world. And I'm all about that. The ripple effect of what you're doing is huge, because, really, I'm making a joke about it, but it works that way. You fix yourself and you understand a few of these key concepts, like, criticism versus observation, or would you say?
It's 2 C's, complaint versus criticism.
Complaint versus criticism.
Yeah, and so criticism is the shame cycle where the individual is the person at fault for whatever it is that's happening. The complaint is the observation of something's wrong here in this scenario, and we can work together to correct it.
Yeah. And
like, you're not a bad person because your clothes are on the floor.
Right. But we would like it if the clothes weren't on the floor.
Yeah. And what we're observing,
but it doesn't make you a bad person for putting them there, but it would make you a better person if you pick them up. But teaching people these concepts, these little basic things, has an effect on the people that they're around, their spouse and their kids, but then it branches out into the larger community because, you know, they interact with other people too. You know, maybe it's their job and then by living the example, it helps other people to start to live that example too, because people mirror back to you what you give them. You know, if you're constantly criticizing kids, they're not going to like you very much. And then you're not going to like them because they don't like you. It's really hard, you know, the going back and forth happens. But when you get one person to change that paradigm, it shifts the paradigm for everybody.
Yeah, it's
Exactly.
a feedback loop. And you know, just like there are those examples every so often of one person paying for the, you know, dinner for the guy behind them in the drive-through line, and then it keeps going, right? And that we are wired, right? And when we learn something new that is helpful and beneficial, we're for sure going to tell our friends and, you know, girlfriends and neighbors, and it's just the way it is. And so you're right, there is, and we just hope that we can get in touch as many people as possible, because you know, once you find that something that, you know, works, and I went through over 20 years of criticism versus complaint, and it's not nice, you know. And so then all of a sudden when you realize there's a different way to do it, my gosh, everybody should know this, and you want everybody to know it so they can feel that same joy.
Yeah. So you guys are moving online. I know you were doing a lot of this in person in conferences and stuff. So how is that looking, and how do people reach out and be part of what you're doing or take advantage of what you're teaching?
Yeah, so we've got online courses that are going to be starting towards the end of this year. We've got in-person retreats that'll be starting next year.
Oh, we do have a retreat for Kenya.
That's correct.
So people that want to go on a safari and become very adventurous and
Yeah.
also work alongside the nonprofit, and, you know, help unstick their stuck in the relationship, that will be occurring May 9th to the 22nd. So that's already on the calendar. And then we're building out a retreat here in Sedona, which will be a shorter time frame, like 3 days.
Probably a 3-day weekend.
thing.
And if you see that rock
Yeah,
behind
there we
us,
go.
there's
some Sedona beauty for you right there. But we want to get that hopefully on the calendar in the next like 6 months, hopefully before the Kenya one.
So what we've got now, we're working on, we own unstickthestuck.com. So we're working on building that out. But in the meantime, anyone can reach us by email at help@unstickthestuck.com. And so that'll come to both of us. So that's one way to reach us right now. And then of course, through Pearls with Purpose.
No, the Facebook page. So we have a
That's true. We do have a
Facebook
Facebook group.
and that
We
is
should probably pull
accessible
up
through the
QR.
yeah, we can actually show you that. So this PDF workbook is free. It's 30 pages of what we've probably previously been doing for a long time and ways to do it differently. So that QR code will get people to that Unstick the Stuck Facebook group, and that meets every Sunday night at 7. And so you'll be looking for that type of logoing. And during that Facebook time, we will go into we've got a workbook so people can actually hands-on, how do I start this rewiring process? What are the questions I should be asking? How should I set myself up? How should I set my month up? So we've got tools, and then this weekly, some people need an accountability piece. So that Sundays at 7 is that accountability piece where if they had a rough week or still haven't started their planner, they could step in on Sunday night and be like, okay, I'm committed, I'm in, I'm doing this. And
it's just that we've got a different topic. So, you know, we've got an area of focus every month, but each week it's a different topic. So we're going to go over that topic, but also, you know, it's a Facebook Live. And so, hey, if somebody has something in particular they really want to listen to or hear us talk about, they can chat as well. And I will sneak this in. If you notice that both the planner and the workbook are all in black and white, that's done on purpose because one of the innate human drives is creativity. And so we want to keep it so that you can go and play with it, color it in, you know, have fun with it. You'll see it in the workbook as well as the planner. But and there's questions to answer on both. Like, this is interactive. This is not something where you're going to get this, read it, and be fixed. You have to do the work. There's questions you have to answer. But once you start that process, you'll find it does moving forward much easier.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And I'll make sure that I put the links in the show notes so that people can get in touch with you. And
Perfect.
for the people that are listening to this as a podcast, they won't be able to see the QR code.
Oh, that's true.
It'll be on YouTube.
Facebook, Unstick the Stuck
Yeah.
is the Facebook page. So yeah,
Yeah.
we can definitely get people connected in.
Definitely send them there. So what's the one thing you want to leave the audience with today?
You want to go first? Otherwise.
Can we each say one?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right. I will go first. In my background, as I said, I had a 20-year marriage that did not go well. And because I am probably the nice, quiet guy who doesn't want to make waves and rock the boat, I just put up with it. And I thought I was doing it for the benefit of my son. And what I was doing was giving him probably about 13 years of listening to his parents argue, which is probably not very healthy, right? So I realize that now. But the one thing I want people to realize is, problems in your relationships, whatever relationship they don't necessarily mean the end of the relationship, but it does mean that there's work that needs to be done. So don't be afraid to do the work. There are people out there, whether it's us or other people, there are people out there who've been through it and they've come through it and succeeded. Find those people and hear what they have to say and try it, because it can make the difference between living an unhappy, unfulfilled life and just being amazingly happy and waking up with joy, really, truly every single day.
Yeah. Yeah. And along that similar line, I'll close it out with a story it just kind of embraces that concept. So my youngest daughter, who's now 25, was 8 years old, and she was a flower girl in her cousin's wedding, and she got a purple dress. And she loved this purple dress, but she did what all little kids do, and she started to grow. She outgrew the dress. It was too small. There's buttons missing. She was super frustrated, but it was her favorite dress. And so running the nonprofit, I said, Jerica, you should, donate your dress. It could help somebody. Oh, it's my favorite dress. Don't make me give it up, Mom. But I said, look, it's too small. So we sewed the buttons on, fixed the sash, and it went off in a container that went. To this date, we've shipped over 260,000 tons of clothing, food, educational supplies, different things, medical supplies into 42 provinces. And so I had no idea where that container was going. Mm-hmm. 2 years after it shipped, my oldest daughter and I, they were filming a documentary on my nonprofit and a couple other ones located in the Philippines. And we got off on this overnight bus in an area called Legazpi City. And as we got off, there was a girl wearing this purple dress, and my older daughter grabbed my arm and said, Mom, that's Jerica's dress. And I was like, no. It shipped 2 years ago. There's no way that dress shipped. Mom, it's her dress, so we go running down and we see this little girl and we're just like, hey, what's your name? Grace Caballero. Where did you get such a beautiful dress? 2 years ago, an angel from America shipped boxes to my village. I'd always wanted a dress to wear to church. Isn't it beautiful? And she spins around. We see these 2 missing buttons. We're swiping the tears. We're taking pictures. And she says, I live out in the jungle here in Legazpi City. And do you want to come meet my family? And so we get to go out, to the jungle, and we get to go see her house, which is
a shack.
And she changes out of this beautiful purple dress and puts on tank top and shorts, comes out with a machete. Are you thirsty? Shimmies up a coconut tree, machetes down a coconut. She hands me the coconut, and I'm just like, what is going on? And I said, well, where's your dress? Oh, when I am too big, my little sister will have her first dress. So from that moment on, who understood contribution? I did. Mm-hmm. My older daughter did. Mm-hmm. And that is something I feel that's missing in relationship, mm-hmm. in doing the work, because the clearer we are on the impact we can have with our healing, with our contribution, with showing up as our best self, the greater our ability is to give, to contribute, to be our best self.
Mhm.
We just have to be clear, and we have to know, oh my gosh, that potential's there. Jerica is like, she runs the show. She gets asked to sign the purple dress book, you know, because
Here's the
she's-
author, but nobody wants her on it.
yeah, it's the star. Here's this little girl who had a transformational experience because at age 10, she understood the impact of giving up something that she loved and how it impacted somebody else. And that made her, you know, I want to give my Barbies, Mom, I want to give my favorite books. I want to do you think they need this? Like, it's given her this leadership skill and core belief system of, I can help. And so when we reach that understanding here within our, I'm pointing to my chest, within ourselves, and we realize, oh, that's important to me. It doesn't matter if we have kids or not. We're role modeling all day long. We are leaders. If we're over the age of 15, we're a leader. And it doesn't matter if they're related to us or not. We can lead down that pathway of growth and progression and just like long-term sustained levels of joy and happiness and purpose. Or we can lead into, I'm going to keep numbing. I don't want to process. I don't want to deal. This happened. Therefore, my life will always be this way. And there's no joy in that. So my how I would want to leave people is, like Dave was saying, do the work, but look at it from that perspective of, if nothing changes, nothing changes.
Yeah.
So do
For
the
sure.
change. Be the change.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
By the way, the book is now in print. That was
We do have a book.
the grace of COVID is all of a
Yeah.
sudden we couldn't travel. So we finally had time to put that book down on paper. And that is all available on the Pearls with Purpose.org website.
The Pearls of Purpose website does have the purple, and it does have the planner as well. So we do have an active website, just not an Unstick the Stuck website. But
It'll be active by the time this airs, though.
that's
So
true.
Perfect.
yeah, no worries there. Thank you so much for sharing with us today.
We really have
You've
fun.
really moved me.
Oh, thanks. That's
Thanks.
great. Glad to hear that.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another empowering episode of the U World Order Showcase podcast. We hope you've enjoyed hearing from our incredible life, health, and transformational coaches who are making a profound impact on the world. Remember, change begins with you, and you have the power to transform your life and the lives of others. If you want to take that next step and unlock your true potential, visit thecoachesalchemist.com, where you can find the 3 ways we can help you for free to spin your talent into gold with clarity, a system, and a plan. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an inspiring episode. And if you enjoyed today's show, we'd greatly appreciate it if you could leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback means the world to us and helps us reach more people with our positive message. Stay connected with us on social media for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and upcoming guest announcements. You can find us on Facebook at the U World Order or simply visit thecoachesalchemist.com.